Hi everyone, thanks for joining. We'll give it a couple of minutes for people to join and then we'll make a start. For those that are here, do you want to get yourself familiar with the chat function? Fiona will be manning the chat today, so any questions, if you'd like to post them on the chat, and I'll try answer them as we go along. Hi everyone, thanks for joining. We'll give it a couple of minutes for people to join and then last minute or so and then we'll make a start. Right, first thank you all for joining. I'm Dr. Paras Patel and I'm working in Tees, Esconway Valley, NHSFT on the Trauma Informed Care project and also working in the North East North Cumbria ICS Wellbeing Hub. Today I'm joined by Fiona McCallum, who's going to introduce herself.
Hello, my name is Fiona McCallum and I work for Tees Esconway Valley NHS as well in the Recovery College as a peer trainer.
Great. Oh, I'm just doing one more setup. Great. So today we're going to go through breathing and heart rate variability and how that can help us in our practices, in our daily life, and how we can understand the science behind our body, the brain, and how they interlink to one another. Before we start, I'd like you to use the chat and just comment on how relaxed you feel using a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being the least relaxed and 10 being the most relaxed you could be. Once you've done that, allows you to check in with yourself as well and think about how anxious you might feel right now. I know for me, I'm probably around a 7, given that I'm presenting to people. Although I've done this presentation many times before, you always get those last minute nerves before we start. See that people are around a 6, 5, 6, Rachel's on the 7, 7, 8. Excellent. Abley. Rachel, 4 out of 10 actors. Also, quite relaxed. Is that a Friday feeling, I guess? People looking forward to the weekend? I can see out my window that it's a lovely day, although it is cold outside. And finally, if you just write in the chat, have you heard of heart rate variability before? And this will just give me a gauge on where to pitch and how to pitch this. So Janice has, interesting. Ooh, Rachel's heading out for a walk after this. Someone's using it on the Fitbit, excellent. Yeah, I've got the Fitbit as well, and it's quite new to me using it on the Fitbit. So we've got a mix of people that have heard of heart rate variability, so I will cover the basics as well as a bit more advanced of how we can use it. I like to start all my sessions with a bit of a check-in and relaxation. So I don't know if you've had time and space to do this today, but you certainly do now. So just close your eyes if you feel that's comfortable. Sit back, relax. Just be within yourself, and we'll do a few minutes of deep breathing. So when you're ready, if you'd like to open your eyes. And now I'd like to check in with yourself again and reflect on how relaxed you feel now. Type in the chat if it's changed. Do you feel more relaxed? Do you feel less relaxed? Also now consider how anxious you feel. Is it the same? Is it more or is it less? See if Fiona's more relaxed, excellent. I always find that doing a couple of minutes of just being with myself and focusing on my breath helps me relax with whatever tasks I might have in hand. Great, Janice feels more relaxed too. Great, more relaxed and less anxious. Amazing. So I see a lot of you have felt the difference, and just giving ourselves those moments do help us be within ourselves. Now, reflecting on your practice, I want you to think back on at what point did you feel the most relaxed? Was it at the beginning, during the middle, or towards the end of it? Middle. A couple of people have said the middle. 3/4 of the way through. Great, and finally just consider when you've done your practice, if your mind wandered off into your imagination, where did it go? Was it perhaps on the work that you've got coming up? Anything that you've got planned for the weekend? Or is it reflections on how your week's been? Work, obviously. That does take a lot of my brain power. To-do lists as well, yeah. And no matter what time of day, week, year, month it is, we've always got a to-do list. Whether it's to do with work or whether it's to do with our personal lives, but most of us do have a running to-do list. And it's important that we do take time to check out of these and just be within ourselves. Noise distractions in the office. I mean, that's not always a bad thing. I mean, how often do you hear these noises in the office? Is it something that you only hear when you're focused and there's silence, or is it something that's really annoying to you? Right, for those that have, actually you probably not seen this video, but we're going to share a video with you, and I'm going to ask you to write in the comments on how you feel as the video plays. Intense, overstimulated, busy, crowded, more intense of, for me, it makes me feel a bit anxious as well. It seems to be a lot going on, chaotic, that's a great word, yeah, wound up, hectic and confused, yeah. Amazing. Now we'll continue this video. Right, so how do you feel now? People are feeling lets me breathe out, arriving and taking a new place, more distant and reflective, much calmer. Danny still felt chaotic, which is interesting. Takes me back to being in New York, a lot more at ease, calmer. Did anyone notice anything about those two videos? Yeah, excellent, Isabel. Exactly, there's the same video but different audio tracks. And what that shows is that how we interpret and how we listen to things can impact on how we feel about something. So although our visual stimulation was the same, the sound stimulation evoked different responses in our body, which then evoked different emotions of the same thing that we were seeing. Yeah, exactly, the music changed how you felt. So moving on to the power of the breath. Have any of you have done any mindfulness meditation before, any deep breathing? people always emphasize on breathing and having these complete breaths. But do people know why? So I'm going to ask you to consider you're walking along the street and you turn a corner and you see something that really shocks you. What's your first bodily reaction? Yeah, excellent, Mandy. It's that sharp intake of breath and that gasp. Yeah, exactly. It's that a shock feeling. Now, if you consider that when you get home from work tonight and you finally sit on the sofa and or in my case, you flop on the sofa, what's your first bodily reaction then? Yeah, that's that long out breath, that sigh of relief feeling. You can almost feel the relaxation going through your body. And what that shows is that the breathing can impact our autonomic nervous system. So every time we take a breath in, you're stimulating a sympathetic nervous response. And every time you breathe out, we're stimulating a parasympathetic, or which the rest and digest response within the body. And this is why it's so important that we control our breathing and we have a balanced breath. Naturally, as humans, we don't take complete breaths. When I ask you, when we did the breathing practice at the beginning, who found that they were breathing slowly and deeply? And then who manages to maintain that same breathing pattern when they're going through the day-to-day activities? I know for me, I certainly don't, and I struggle to sometimes keep that slow, continuous, complete breath when the demands of life are so large. If you think about someone called them pigeon breaths. Absolutely, yeah, they're not complete. So it's important to recognise that our breath quality is determined by how well we use our body, in particular the diaphragm. So that's the base of, or the top of the stomach, base of the lungs, and that expands and relaxes and helps you complete that full breath. So if you're thinking of someone that's suffering from an anxiety attack, for example, you notice that they have short, shallow breathing, and that's evoking a stress response within the body. So we're going to do a breathing practice at the end, and what I'm going to ask you to do at that time is focus on your breathing, solely on your breathing. And what we're going to do is just sit up, really engage our core muscles when we do our breathing practice at the end. So I said that the breath relates to the autonomic nervous system, and there's two main systems. The central of this system is the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system. The parasympathetic is the rest and digest. This is where our heartbeats slow down. We secrete bile in our stomachs and for digestion. We stimulate saliva in the mouth in preparation for eating food, for example. Our pupils constrict, and we feel generally relaxed. The flip side, the sympathetic, or the fight, flight, or freeze response. I'm sure you've all heard of that before. This activates our body. It gets our heartbeats up. Our muscles get prepared for action. Our breath goes up as well, our breathing. And what the function of this system is to prepare us for survival. Our body's resources are targeted to those functions that are essential, that will help us. So our breathing and our heart rate goes up to get the oxygen to the muscles that will help us either fight, or run from a situation. We convert glycogen into glucose, which is ready-made energy for us. We inhibit flow of saliva within the body. At that moment in time, our body's not thinking, oh, we're going to digest some food. It's thinking survival. So at that stage, we inhibit the saliva production. So there's a short video that will take you through the fight, flight, and freeze response.
Humans, like all species, have self-protective mechanisms to help us survive. Our fight, flight, or freeze survival response, the FFF for short, is designed to mobilize our brain and body to fight an enemy, run from an avalanche, or freeze to hide from a predator. Our brain sometimes misinterprets safe situations as dangerous and can set off false alarms. When the amygdala, our brain's watchdog, senses and barks danger, our body enters survival mode quicker than our rational mind can react. leaving it trying to figure out why we feel in mortal danger. When the FFF alarm is sounded, we start to breathe more quickly and shallow, causing hyperventilation, and our heart starts beating very fast. These changes can cause strong chest pain, which many people interpret as symptoms of a heart attack, when in fact it's just a result of the FFF activation, which can be relieved through breathing exercises. As a way of getting you ready for action, blood is diverted towards the major muscle groups. Blood flows away from our digestive system, causing the bladder to relax, and we might feel the need to pee. The mouth goes dry, nausea can occur, and we get the butterflies feeling in our stomach. Blood also rushes from extremities, leaving us with cold hands, but often sweaty palms as the action-ready body starts sweating to avoid overheating. Legs and hands can start trembling and feel weak, while tension starts building in big muscles like the thighs, neck, and shoulders. In our head, FFF alarms cause our brain to focus on negative memories, probably so it can scan them to avoid danger and negative outcomes. We get tunnel vision as our pupils dilate to increase our focus and long vision, but as a result, we lose our peripheral vision. FFF activation also reduces our ability to recognize differences in facial expressions. Too much oxygen and too little CO2 can result in dizziness or lightheadedness, which many people interpret as signs that they might faint. But because fainting is caused by a drastic drop in blood pressure, and because the FFF increases both our heart rate and blood pressure, it's nearly impossible to faint when this happens. Over time, depression, anxiety, and high levels of stress all harm the brain's ability to slow or cancel false FFF activations, causing them to happen more often. Knowing the symptoms of false activations makes it easier to recognize and reduce their effects. At Tankyboxen, you can learn both bottom-up and top-down techniques to reduce false FFF activation and bring your body back to balance. Humans.
Great. So the reason we go through this looking at the autonomic nervous system, is because it plays a key role in our heart rate variability. And now we'll go through that. So what is heart rate variability? Heart rate variability is the time gap in milliseconds of the time gap between two consecutive heartbeats. So if you look on this chart here, we've got 4 heartbeats. From beat 1 to beat 2, we have a time gap of 0.859 seconds. From beat 2 to beat 3, there's a time gap of 0.793 seconds. And beat 3 to beat 4, a time gap of 0.726 seconds. So what that's showing is that as the time gap is decreasing, our heart rates are increasing. This is stimulated by the autonomic nervous system. So to remain in that relaxed state, we want an increased time gap between each heartbeat. So when we plot these changes in milliseconds, what we get is a sinusoidal waveform. When we're plotting these and we're looking at these through a HRV plotter, for example, so this is equipment from HeartMath, we can see that here an individual, when it's plotted over time, you can see that it's quite chaotic. They're quite low, quite high. There's no rhythm. If you look at an analysis that provides, there's 50% in the red, which means that the synchronicity between the mind and the body is not there. There's 35% in the blue and 15% in the green. We want to achieve that green coherent state where our minds and bodies are working together. Someone that's practiced breathing, mindfulness, even yoga, which helps with the breathing, you can see what their plots look like over time. So you can see that these are very smooth sinusoidal waveforms that are consistently hitting highs and consistently hitting the lows as well. If you look at their analysis, they're only 7% in the red, 14% in the blue, and a high 79% in the green, which is great. To reach that green zone, what we want is to be coherent. And we have 3 main systems that inform our heart rate. We have heart rate variability, we have respiration variability, and we have blood pressure variability. So if you look to the left of this dotted line, these systems have all got an individual plot. They're all working independently, looking at signals from the environment within our body and acting accordingly. When someone does a coherent meditation, deep breathing, yoga, or any practice that you find relaxing for you, you find that the systems become synchronous to one another and they're working together. So your internal signals match the external signals. Your internal environment of the body matches what your brain's processing, and that's when you're in that relaxed state. I noticed that someone in the chat mentioned that it's good to share this video with patients. So I'll share that link, or Fiona will share that into the chat. Those that work with service users, you might find that they're in this hyperarousal state, where they're continuously activation of the sympathetic nervous system, where they stress continuously. Getting them to do these practices will help them transition and have a balance between the interplay between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. When we're thinking about coherence, if you look at this canoe here, we've got 7 people that working as a team. If they don't work as a team, the canoe will go in one direction, left or right. It will not go in a straight line. And that's what we want our systems to be like as well. We want them to work together, an optimal state in which the heart, mind and emotions are operating in a synchronous and balanced manner. Our heart rate variability can be influenced by our emotions. Emotions are a communication between the heart, brain, mind, hormonal system, as well as other systems that help feed back to the brain of the internal environment, external environment, and how we process information. If I ask you in the chat now just to think of any memory, when you thought of that memory, how many of you have got an emotion attached to that memory? Yes, I see. Yes, happiness, yeah. So often our emotions can help us remember things, whether it's good or bad. I mean, it's very difficult to remember a standard day where nothing significant happened. But when something significant happens and we emotionally respond to it, we're more likely to create a memory that's formed around it. An emotion can cause a cascade of changes within the biochemical system. Some are draining, like the Monday morning feeling, although you've just had the weekend off work and you feel like you should be energized, but if you're anything like me, you're not. And then some can be renewing, so although you've had a full week at work, the Friday feeling where you get energy, although you should be tired, you're looking forward to the weekend, you might have some exciting plans, or you're looking forward to something different. And we do have the power to choose and manage our emotions and our reactions to them. Emotions can cause changes, the biochemical changes. Positive changes and negative can be up to 1,500 changes in the body. So for negative, where cortisol is produced, for example, can you imagine someone that's consistently having negative thoughts and the disruption that will cause to an individual over time? Negative emotions can also cause an imbalance between the brain and the body and the systems. It can cause cognitive shutdown. And it also leads to suboptimal performances because parts of the cognitive process and parts of the brain shut down. On the flip side, when we have positive emotions, that causes 1,500 positive biochemical changes. It creates coherence and balance between multiple systems. We get a lot more mental clarity, and we become optimal productive as well. So if we were to plot emotions on HRV, this is what we'd see. So at the top of this graph, this is an individual that's connected to heart rate variability monitor, where we've asked him to think of something that's very frustrating to him. You can see here that the heart rate variability trace is very chaotic. It's low, it goes high, it's not really consistent. That same person, about 15, 20 minutes later, we asked him to think of something that he appreciates. And he told us at this point that he was thinking of his mother. And you can see the instant change in the heart rate variability plot. You see these very smooth, coherent waveforms where they're consistently hitting the highs and also consistently hitting the lows. What you can see on the first one is you can see the probably average heart rate is probably around 65 to 67 beats per minute across the reading. But it's at one point it's the highest of 80 and the lowest of 50. Whereas when they're feeling appreciation, the average heart rate there is probably around 70, but they're consistently hitting the highs of 80, but again, consistently hitting the lows of 60. And that's where heart rate variability is. When you exercise, you're consistently hitting those highs and lows. That will help us to adapt to when we're facing different challenges. If we were going to plot emotions using heart rate variability and the hormonal changes in the body, if you can think of the x-axis as your autonomic nervous system, where you've got sympathetic at the top, where you've got a high heart rate or excitement, and then you've got the parasympathetic at the bottom, which is a low heart rate or relaxation. On the y-axis, you've got cortisol on the left, which is usually associated with negative emotions, and on the right, you've got DHEA, which is usually associated with positive emotions. So if you put that on a graph, and if you write into the chat as we go through this, if we start in the top left-hand box, if you had a high heart rate and high amounts of cortisol going through your body, what kind of emotions would you put in this top left-hand box? Excellent, yeah. Fear, anger. Fear again, yeah. Panic, excellent. Worry, yeah. So some that I've got in my box are anger, panic, terror, frustration, hatred, despair, and disgust. And these aren't limited to these. It's very individualistic, but what we can tell is what emotion and what physiological response we have to it. So if we go to the bottom left-hand box now, so we still got high amounts of cortisol running through our body, but now we have a low heart rate. What emotions would you put in the bottom left-hand box? Sadness, grief, yeah, excellent. Resigned, yeah. Loss, grief, excellent, yeah. A lot of you have covered the ones I have. So depression, worry, anxiety, guilt, grief, self-pity, boredom. So almost we can see that although we're on the left-hand side where we've got high cortisol, our heart rate can determine then the emotions that we're feeling, and this will then impact how we respond. Now moving to the right-hand side of the box. So we start in the bottom right-hand corner where we've still got a low heart rate, but now we've got positive hormone DHEA running through us. What kind of emotions would you put in the bottom right-hand box? Excellent, yeah, love. Calmness, yeah. Contentment, happiness, appreciation. These are excellent, yeah. Relaxed. Great, yeah. I think you've covered all the ones that I've got. Love, compassion, care, appreciation, content, interest, and peace. And finally in the top right-hand box, so we've got a high heart rate now and still have high amounts of DHEA through the body. What kind of emotions can we put in the top right-hand box? Excitement, yeah. Highs, yeah. Enthused, yeah, excellent. Happiness. So I've got joy, excitement, passion, pride, exhilaration, elevation, inspiration. So I always find a useful exercise when I'm working with individuals is if they're feeling emotion is to try put it into a box. If you then can put it into a box, you can then start to understand what physiological changes are happening within the body. So if I'm feeling really angry, I know that my heart rate would be high and I've got high amounts of cortisol. So to get out that anger, what I'd want to do is do something that will drop my heart rate, whether it be a breathing practice, for example, and think of something positive that will then cause the 1500 positive hormones to be running through my body, and that will counteract the impact that the cortisol is having, and will help to change your emotions that you're feeling and the mindset that you might be in. Again, a lot of us will be probably regulating just before the x-axis here. It's too much energy to always be in that top right hand box, and I think it's quite unrealistic to be there 100% of the time. But we want to be somewhere there majority of the time. So recognizing that and knowing what we can do to achieve that state helps us be there. So our heart rate variabilities when we're youngest is at its highest, and it steadily declines with age. My personal thinking is that because as we get older, we have more responsibilities. I mean, when I was 6-7 years old, my biggest stressor was what I was going to play with, what toys I had access to. It wasn't whether I'm going to pay my bills or if I got my work deadlines in. So as stress then impacts our physiology, impacts our heart rate variability, but we can have exercises that will help us improve our heart rate variability over time again. Heart rate variability is a strong and independent predictor for future health problems. I know it's been used in physiology, and it's been used by doctors to predict heart attacks, for example, or chronic heart failure. It's an indicator for psychological resiliency and our ability to handle stress. The higher our heart rates, the more likely we are to handle larger amounts of stress. Heart rate variability, sorry. Just trying to get an elastic band. So what I'm going to ask you is, like, heart rate variability is like an elastic band. So if you can see the elastic band in my hand now, if that's just static and then having a sudden influx of stress on the band, so I stretch it as much as I can, what's likely to happen to the elastic band? Yep, excellent. Snap. Exactly, yeah. The elastic band now, I'm just continuously stretching it and relaxing it, stretching it and relaxing it, continuously throughout the day. And I have that sort of bit of stress. What's going to happen to the elastic band now? Is it more or less likely to snap? Excellent, yeah, it will adapt and absorb the stress. Less likely to snap. Yeah, because it's been exercised. And it's the same with our heart rate variability and our stress. The more we exercise our heart rate variability, the more stress we can handle. So if we do have a stressful period, the likeliness of it leading to damage to our health is decreased. Higher heart rate variability is also associated with superior mental performances. And this slide will show why. So if we start on the left-hand side, which is called cortical inhibition, does anyone recognise that heart rate variability trace here? It's the one that we saw when someone was feeling a negative emotion, feeling stressed. It's a very chaotic pattern. So if our heart and our brain and our body are in this state, our brains are primed for our survival. It's interpreting that information in our amygdala. So we have increased activity in our amygdala, which is scanning for information, scanning for changes, is activating our fight, flight, or freeze response. If we have increased activity in the amygdala, we have decreased activity in the prefrontal cortex, which is the front part of the thinking part of the brain. On the flip side, when we have cortical facilitation, when we're in this coherent, relaxed state, our bodies are now not in this survival state, so the activity in our amygdala is decreased. This means that we have more processing power in the prefrontal cortex, which allows us to process our information. Has anyone been with a group of friends where one of them might have turned around and said something that's caught you off guard, or asked you a question and you've not been prepared for it? I know when that's happened to me, what my first reaction is that and nothing comes to my brain, nothing comes out to my mind, and I almost feel like I know nothing. Nothing works. My brain doesn't work. I can't think of anything. Only when I start walking away and processing what's been said, do I start thinking, oh well, I could have said this or I could have said that. Is anyone familiar with that? Yeah, Sophie knows that feeling as well. Yeah, oh, more people coming through. Exactly that. And that's what happens when someone catches you off guard. We have this sudden increase in the amygdala and we're stressed and we can't think of anything. If we're working with service users or students, for example, who are going into exams and they're in that high stress state, and they could have done all the preparation, they know all the material, but when you're in that stress state and your brain power is focused in the amygdala and for survival, we can't process that information, nor can we regurgitate what we know. And this is where people start struggling. Learning environment is the exact same thing. We struggle to learn if we're in a hyperarousal state. So when I started this presentation today, this is why I like to start with a breathing practice, just to get everyone calm and relaxed, decrease the activity in the amygdala, increase activity in the cortex. So heart rate variability has already been used by thousands of people in different ways. It's been used in hospitals for both psychological and physiological work. It's used in businesses for decision makers, for example. I've used it in the police, ambulance, fire services, and these are service people that see trauma on a daily basis. And if they keep replaying that trauma and it activates the sympathetic nervous system, then they're going to be in this hyperarousal state for continuous and large amounts of time. So for them to use heart rate variability, that gives them the real-time feedback to relax and be within themselves. It helps them process what's happened. It helps them disengage from it and be within themselves. It's been used in schools, universities. I don't know if there's anyone here that likes football or rugby, but Arsenal Football Club, Man United Football Club, the New Zealand rugby team, they've all started using heart rate variability to understand their mental functioning, their mental capacity, as well as their physical functioning and burnout. It's used in the military, and then there's loads of individuals worldwide that use it. So rather than me telling you that this is great, I found some research that shows how heart rate variability can have positive impact. So application of heart rate variability can help determine the balance between the sympathetic, the stress response, or the parasympathetic relaxation response. Helps risk of sudden cardiac death and all-cause mortality. It can indicate fitness levels and nervous system age rating. And it also assesses moment-to-moment changes in the function of the autonomic nervous system. When we look at coherence in more detail, why do we want to be in this coherent state? What does it mean when we have a balanced functioning between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system? Well, research has shown that those that have been in this coherent state have reduced blood pressure in hypertension, increased functional capacity in chronic heart failure patients. There's been improvements in asthma, increased calmness and well-being, increased emotional stability, as well as improved cognitive performances. One of the key aspects of looking at this and understanding our physiology and the impact through our heart rate variability is our ability to self-regulate, and it's the ability to respond to our daily stresses, our daily demands of daily life. I know when I actually checked in at the start, people mentioned that their attention was on their to-do list. But the ability to self-regulate and being aware that there's a to-do list to do, but to put that to a side and just focus on yourself will help you to self-regulate, to be in that calm, coherent zone. The ability to monitor, evaluate and modify physiological and psychological states. So if we recognise, looking at that grid, how our emotions are impacting our physiology and what box we can put ourselves in, that will help us to regulate to a state that we want to achieve by doing a breathing practice to bring our heart rates down, or increasing our movements to bring our heart rates up. We can all do different things that help influence our physiology. The ability to initiate inhibit and modulate physiology, emotions, feelings, thoughts, and behaviors. And it's being the driver, not the driven. And we're in control of our emotions rather than our emotions in control of us. I know I referred to a device on throughout the presentation. So the one that I've put it in a slide is a biofeedback device. So you can see here, this is a simple clip that clips onto your earlobe and it connects to an app on your mobile phone. And it gives you real-time data about your practice. So when you're in that green coherence zone, it maps that. And even when you have a thought that could disrupt your practice, it will be reflected in your heart rate variability instantaneously. So when I've used the biofeedback, and I'm sure Fiona will be able to tell you more about how she's used it and how we've used it at the Recovery College, is that it gives you that level of engagement that when we do practice like mindfulness and we're not getting that real-time feedback, it adds that level of engagement and feedback that allows people to connect with it more. It allows you to compare how each of your practices have gone, rather than just doing the check-ins where we did how relaxed you feel or how anxious you feel. Comparing your heart rate variability scores throughout each of your practices will help you determine if you're progressing and the impact that it's had on you. So if you do one at the start and then do a practice and then do a second measurement, you can see whether your heart rate or the time gap between each of your heart rates increased and how that's impacted your physiology. There's also games on there that will help you to remain in that coherent state. And it's increasing use in mental health and learning disability research at the moment. So we're going to do a second practice as we finish now. And this time I'm going to ask you to sit up, fully engage your lungs, your diaphragm, your stomach muscles when you're breathing. And I'm going to ask you to focus and count in your heads, or out loud if you're by yourself and you find that more comfortable. And then just breathe in for 4 seconds and exhale for 6 seconds. If you feel comfortable doing that, if you feel uncomfortable, then you can do a balanced 5 second, 5 second. And the reason why I'm asking you to extend the exhalation is because we know that the out breath exercises the parasympathetic nervous system, so we want to try to excel that more. So we'll make a start on that. when you're ready, if you'd like to open your eyes and join back in, I'd ask you to write into the chat how you found that particular practice. How did you find the breathing with the inhalation for 4 seconds and exhalation for 6 seconds? How did you find, if you didn't sit up before, to sit up and really engage your lungs this time? Feel like you wanted to inhale more? Some people found more relaxed. If you found like you wanted to inhale more, you might be better off just to start with a 5-to-5 balanced breath and slowly increase it. Not everyone will find it comfortable first time around. Rachel says, I've done this regularly for a couple of years and I love the feeling of calm it induces. Absolutely. I find that it helps me immensely as well. And even sometimes when I find myself, if I go for a run, I just have that extended out breath and it finds a few more miles in me somehow. And I don't find myself being as stressed when I'm trying. Struggle with the timings. I find it easy just to breathe in and out more regularly without the counting. That's fine. And just find the rhythm that suits you. There's no right or wrong answer. As long as you achieve that relaxed, coherent state, that's the goal. There's no goal of you have to be 4 to 6 or 3 to 7. It's what works best for you. Great, I'm glad that you found it relaxing. Excellent. Before we finish, Fiona, is there anything you'd like to add? Oh, she's lost her co-host. Sorry, if you can unmute yourself now.
Hi everybody, sorry I got kicked off for a few moments. So yeah, just a little bit about how we've used heart variability in the college. I just think it's just such a great tool for you to actually see your achievements and to kind of motivate you to see where you are. Because I know in terms of knowing that you can relax, there's a lot of trust that you've got to have in yourself to know that you can kind of get into that coherent space. And it basically just adds as a motivator, so that you know, if say for example you've gone out for a run and or you do mindfulness or breathing, that what you are doing is enhancing your well-being. So for us, we've just found it's a great visual so that people can keep track of where they're at, really.
Great, thank you. I haven't heard of the Sudarshan Kriya, but Paul, my email address was up there, so if you don't mind signing it, I'd love to have a look at this. But there is a lot of evidence of the focus of the breath and how we can influence our physiology. So anything that you can add to that would be great. Is the amygdala always scanning? It is. So we've got two main kind of functions. We've got interoception and neuroception. And what they're doing is the interoception is continuously scanning our internal environments, our body, how we're feeling, oxygen demand, for example. Our neuroception is continuously scanning our environment. And if they both match, this is when we can achieve this coherent state. So it is continuous, and when we're in this relaxed environment, this is when we're at our internal relaxed environment as well as the external environment. So when we can be relaxed. How does doing energetic stuff add to this? So it's about how you feel, and it's about using the energy in the right places. So when people are feeling anxious, for example, it's putting the energy in the sufficient places for it to help us function. If you're feeling that you worry a lot, for example, and you've got a lot of tension in your shoulders, doing like being in coherent state, doing what I find Tai Chi quite good for this, is just relaxing and moving the body and moving around the spine where the energy could be in a more sufficient place. How does running and dancing contribute to heart rate variability? Okay, So when we do any sort of exercise, we release endorphins, which immediately, and I guess you'll find that when you finish these exercises, you feel good, and we have the positive emotions that are running through our body and our positive changes, and it helps with our heart rate variability through our balanced sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. I've come across specific HIIT cycles to help this. 20 seconds flat out. 20 seconds. There's various HIIT cycles out there that help intensity. It's all about finding the best that works for you. It's being in that state where you achieve what you want to achieve, and it's not that it's your goals that you're reaching, and working with your body rather than against your body will help you reach that. Some people might find that 70 seconds is too long, and they might do it for 60 seconds, under 30 seconds, and then a minute rest, for example. So there's a lot of variation out there. Use breathing patterns to help people manage your urgencies. Again, it's to do with the function of the autonomic nervous system, so that relaxation and the stress response. And this is how we can help our physiology and how it works together. Does anyone have any other questions? Great. Well, I like to finish on this quote from Viktor Frankl, which is, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." I'd like to thank you all for joining today, and I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. Any questions, I'll put my email into the chat now. Feel free to contact. If anyone is interested in getting any devices as well, feel free to let me know, and we can work something for you. Thank you all.